This hour of the program brought to you by Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. Let's just close out the conversation that we had just before the break and just before we got into our daily wager and our poll questions. Regarding Cade Cunningham, front and center, really like the player, really like him. Second of all, he's got to take care of the basketball. We all know that. 4.9 turnovers per game, unacceptable, especially in the fourth quarter. We could talk about how Detroit is looking better, and we've already talked about that this morning. More competitive, more togetherness. Love JB Bickerstaff. I think it's a really great hire. All those things ahead of that conversation. But just because he's your best player, just because you really like the player, just because you see an improvement in the entire team doesn't mean that he's getting everything out of his ability or doing his ultimate responsibility besides scoring. We can look at the scoring all we want. Oh, my God, look at this. And the assists. It's great. But 5 turnovers a game is not going to cut it. And just because he's got the ball in his hands so much doesn't mean that that's acceptable. Isaiah Thomas had the ball in his hands more than anybody else, led the league in assists, and averaged about 3.5 turnovers per game. When he led the league in assists at almost 14 per game, he had about 3.5 turnovers per contest. What's the acceptable ratio? I don't know. I have the answer to that. JB Bickerstaff would know that better than I would. Luke Walton would know that better than I would. The entire coaching staff would. But those things, if that continues, this team is you're going to grow more and more frustrated. Freddie says you need a true point guard. I have no problem with Cade Cunningham being the guy who is the distributor and the primary ball handler. But I'm going to have a serious problem with it if he continues to be second in the league in turnovers. There's nothing wrong with saying that. It's not a diss on the player. It's you recognizing one of the player's weaknesses that has to be improved. Do you follow what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And correct me if I'm wrong, maybe we can bring him from 5 down to 3.5, and that would even be acceptable given his usage rate. Ironically, Jaden Ivey's also averaging 3.5 at 3.3, I think, to be exact, turnovers per game. So the backcourt at large probably needs to bring it down as a whole. But I'm with you. He can't be second in the league. He can't be averaging close to 5 turnovers per game. He's got to bring it down a little bit. Yeah. I just want people to understand that when you're a point guard and a superstar the way he is, and yes, I just used that word superstar.
Yeah, he's not a superstar.
He's close to a triple-double every night.
Yeah, he's not a superstar.
Turnovers are going to happen, but you got to minimize it. That's just my point.
Yeah, for sure. Right. I get your point. He's not a superstar. Just because he's the best player on this team doesn't make him a superstar. All right. Superstar status is reserved for certain players. I don't want to get nitpicky here, but I am. Giannis Antetokounmpo is a superstar. Period. Luka Doncic is a superstar. Nikola Jokic is a superstar. Your buddy, LeBron James, is a superstar. Joel Embiid is a superstar. He's not a superstar. And that's okay. He isn't yet. Doesn't mean he won't be. He can be, right? Doesn't mean he's not going to be someday. I'm just telling you right now, he's not a superstar. He's not on an Olympic team. He's not an all-star. He should have been an all-star last year.
Can I call him an all-star?
Yeah. No, because he's not an all-star.
But he will be this year?
I hope so.
He's 22-8-7. I mean, I got to imagine
we're 12
he'll
games
get the
deep.
votes this year. I know we're 12 games deep. I understand.
So I'm going to if you want to, go right ahead. I'm going to reserve judgment on that right now. I like the player. I'll reiterate. I like the player a lot. It's just there's certain things that he's got to improve upon, and it's okay to expect more from your best player and your highest paid player. It's okay to expect more from the Detroit Red Wings too, especially beyond their first line. Now, this team under 500 right now, disappointing, flat out disappointing. When you are third to last in the National Hockey League in goals for at about 2.4 per game, that is disappointing. When you're only getting solid, consistent production from Dylan Larkin, Alex DeBrincat, Lucas Raymond, it's really disappointing. And what's really disappointing right now with this team is they just don't seem like they fit. I know that's a rather generic comment, but there's something off. Like we talked earlier about the Pistons. They may not have the best record in the league. They may not be a playoff team. We don't know. But they seem to be cohesive. Obviously, the Lions feel that way because they're 8-1 and they seem to work well together. They understand their roles. All right. For the Red Wings, there just seems to be something off. And I don't know if you feel it too. I don't know if you can put it more succinctly to us, but it seems like they're missing something and they're just not off. Steve Yzerman goes out and he signs Vladimir Tarasenko, who, full disclosure, I thought it was a really good signing. And to be honest with you, it could be way too early to pass judgment. I'll leave you that. If you're 14 games in and you want to reserve judgment, I don't blame you. But the early results are that at a 2-year deal worth almost $5 million per season, 2 goals in 13 games ain't cutting it. And I think it's at some point, if it's not now, at some point, you members of Red Wings Nation, those of you who truly believe that Steve Yzerman is the answer, you've got to ask yourself, who are the free agents and what are the trades that have left you most inspired? Because, look, I'm hoping the goaltender situation right now works out. I really am. I hope Cam Talbot's the guy because he's had Nedeljkovic, he's had Husso, he's had Bernier, he's had Lyon, and Lyon to a certain extent, they didn't work out. You've got some forwards right now. I like David Perron. Let him go. I liked Robbie Fabry. Let him go. I'm not saying you shouldn't because perhaps they wanted more money. Perhaps this was a cost-saving purpose so you could, make sure you're rewarding Lucas Raymond and Mo Seider. But damn, find me the guy who has made the impact you expected he would make when you signed him or when you traded for him. I'm having a hard time finding that guy right now. Maybe it was Shane Gostisbehere. He's gone. Maybe it was Perron. Good value. Good leadership. He's gone. It seems like they are struggling as an organization to find the right people to play with one another. And I think it shows on the ice. Let's go back to the phone lines. Meyer hotline 866-838-4843. Who's up next on this Wednesday morning? Hey, Brett, what's going on today? Good, buddy. Well, it should be an encouraging sign as a 50-year-old man in Michigan. It should be a really encouraging sign, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Ooh, he was good. Yeah. I did. Yeah, right. Yeah. I'm with you on that. As a matter of fact, I thought there was a travel. I thought there was a travel on Tyler Hero taking the last shot in regulation. I thought he either carried it or he traveled. Okay. Well. I mean, I thought you were referring to some of the game last night and referring to some of the travels. We got. Oh, Michigan State. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. I got to hit a break. I'm sorry to cut you loose there. I got to hit a break though. We're up against it. We'll have more on the other side here on X's and Bros. Stay with us. NBA is finally back. A new season means new ways to get into the action to DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA. Who's going to hit the big three? Who's going to grab the big rebound? Who's going to have that highlight assist? Get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings, the home of the NBA player props. First time, no problem. New DraftKings customers, if you bet $5, you get $200 in bonus bets instantly. Every point counts with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use the code HUGE. That's HUGE for new customers to get $200 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants some help, call 1-800-GAMBLER. 21 years or older, Michigan only. Eligibility restrictions do apply. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.com/bball. God, I love this talk. It's awesome. Welcome back. X's and BrO's, Monday through Friday, 6 till 9. You can follow us on Twitter at XB Mornings. You can follow me at ShepMatt. You can watch our show on StreamYard right now. You can do that. And we are live on Twitter at XB Mornings. We are live on Facebook, and we are live on YouTube as well at X's and BrO's. I'm Matt Shepard. Trent Bally is our producer. Let's get back to our phone calls. The Meyer Hotline, 866-838-4843. And this hour of our program, proudly sponsored by our friends at Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. Who's up next?
We've got John, and he's got some thoughts on MSU hoops from last night.
John, good morning to you. How are you?
Hey, good morning, Shep. How you doing?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for listening.
Yeah, so I just have a few observations from yesterday's game. I think the Spartans played really hard. But I was very disappointed in Jaden Akins and the way Xavier Booker played. Those two guys are supposed to be two of their best players, and they didn't show up yesterday.
Yeah, agreed 100%. I said this earlier when we started talking Michigan State basketball. We said, no offense. This is absolutely no offense to any particular player, all right? I'm not saying your best player has to be leading every single night. You'd love to spread the wealth a little bit. But when you are led by Jackson Kohler, with a double-double, and give him a lot of credit, I don't know if that's the recipe for long-term success. Now, I don't know how much, to be honest with you, how much do you weigh Kansas taking away Michigan State's weapons, like Akins, like Booker, and how much do you consider it them struggling as much as they did last night? What's your balance there?
Right, I agree 100% with that. Definitely.
Because Michigan State did the same thing with some of the players for Kansas. They did a good job with KJ Adams, right? They couldn't handle Hunter Dickinson.
Yeah.
Right? The comment you made, though, about Michigan State, look, I thought they played hard. I don't disagree with that. I think that's important. But I always viewed Michigan State, for the most part, they always play hard. I don't worry about that aspect. I'm not saying this is going to be a habit, but let's hope it's not habitual. They better shoot the basketball better than they did last night. You go 3 for 24 from deep, you're not winning any games.
True, that's true. 100%.
Right? You got to shoot the basketball.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I don't, no offense to Frankie Fiddler, okay? I don't want him leading my team in scoring. But damn, 3 for 24? Really? You can't shoot better than that from 3? Yeah.
Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah, it is terrible, and that's not going to cut it. And look, I think that is probably that's going to happen fewer times than it, throughout the season. But if you're going to if your takeaway from last night is them playing hard, okay. My takeaway from last night is that in addition to they're not a very good shooting basketball team, and that's got to get corrected.
No, not at this point.
No.
Yeah, correct.
And it will. I'm not worried about it. I think they showed something last night. They showed some toughness, which I always love and respect about Michigan State. And thanks for the phone call. Look, even when I was calling Michigan basketball, the thing you always knew what you were going to get from MSU, it's very similar to how I explain MSU's football team. Big reason I love Jonathan Smith is that he seems to be restoring Michigan State football to the way you're supposed to and the way you have to win in the Big Ten, and I think in the national landscape. And you've got to win up front. And I don't say that just because Michigan won last year. I don't say that just because the Lions are successful. When you look at past champions, look at Georgia. When Georgia had the run, look at Alabama. Sure, we get caught up in Jalen Milroe and we get caught up in Jalen Hurts and we get caught up in, the various wide receivers that they've had, Devontae Smith, LSU with Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow at the quarterback position. But you know what? Look at them up front. Look who's leading the way in the trenches. That is how you win. It just doesn't get a lot of glorified exposure. The only time you talk about the offensive line is when they introduce themselves in an NFL game, when they introduce themselves or they're put on a full screen graphic, or you see laundry on the field. Michigan State is starting to do that. Tom Izzo's team, he understands, look, you can rebound all you want, but you better shoot the basketball. That's the way it is in college hoops today.
And Shep, that is something to monitor. I just want to throw this in there because I looked this up. I mean, we're only 3 games in.
Right.
Against Monmouth, they shot 3 for 18 from deep, and against Niagara, 6 for 18. So better, but that's still only 33%.
Right.
So it is a very small sample size, but through 3 games, that is the issue with this team is they can't hit threes.
And Trent, you can get away with that against Monmouth. You're not getting away with that against Illinois and Purdue and Indiana in the Big Ten.
And now USC and UCLA and Washington. I mean, that was the difference in the game last night, Shep. Was it not?
No doubt. You beat Kansas. You beat the number 1 team in the country if you can shoot the basketball. If
you hit 6 or 7 threes, which still would be well below 50%, but if you hit 6 or 7 instead of 3, completely different game.
So answer me this, though, because they've never been really viewed as a 3-point shooting team. Scott Skiles, of course, Sean Respert, of course, but I'm talking about recently. They're not necessarily viewed as one of those teams that's a high-volume 3-point shooting team. Is their lack of shooting last night, based on you watching the game, we all watched it, right? You watched it, callers watched it, texters watched it. Do you credit Kansas's defense or Michigan State's inability to shoot the basketball?
The latter. For me, I don't know how you feel, but for me, I agree with your whole sentiment of Michigan State is not necessarily a run and gun team. They never have been. It's always been defend, rebound, run. But watching last night, when you are hunting 3-point shots and it looks like they want that to be a focal part of the offense, right? Xavier Booker's stretch 5. He's out there shooting threes from there. Then you got to hit some of these, man. So I agree with you, Shep. I think it's more incompetence on Michigan State's end than it was Kansas' defense.
Yeah, otherwise stop shooting the damn 3.
Yeah.
Okay? That's how you're going to keep defenses honest. Otherwise, they're just going to collapse on you. Go ahead, shoot it. I dare you. That's what it is. That's what it is. It's like a pitcher who can't locate his fastball. You're like, I'm just going to spit on every fastball, and I'll just sit on off-speed stuff. It's hard to win that way, okay? Or just the opposite. You have no control over your slider. I'm going to spit on it every time. I'm just going to sit dead red. You'll get killed. You can't do it that way. That's kind of a nice transition, actually. Alec Boehm, according to reports, is on the trade block. The Phillies apparently were so disgusted with his second half and his postseason performance, in which he was benched, by the way, that they are listening to offers from the guy who was taken right after Casey Mize in the draft. Full disclosure, when he came out of Wichita State, he's the guy I wanted. He's coming off an all-star season, which goes to show you that just because you're an all-star doesn't mean you had a great season. He had a really good first half. Would you consider trading for Alec Boehm?
For the Tigers? No.
Well, yeah, for the Tigers. I mean, yeah, would you?
Okay, so this is a very fresh storyline, so it's going to be interesting to see, because I'm sure we'll find out who the suitors are going to be. Do you think the Tigers would even consider it?
Yes.
You think Scott Harris is going to make the call?
Well, let me ask you this. Do you think you're going to fill the void at third base? If you think there's a void, do you think you're going to fill it with a free agent?
Probably not.
Because we've already talked about this.
We have, yeah.
We talked. Alex Bregman is going to command $26-27 million. I know there's a lot of people who think this is awesome because he played for AJ in Houston. Well, so did Carlos Correa, but Carlos Correa didn't come here. So if you're not going to fill it through free agency, if you're not completely sold on Jace Young yet, I'm not saying you should or shouldn't be. Why wouldn't you trade for a 28-year-old? Depending on what you have to give up, okay? A 28-year-old who has proven power, 15 homers last year, 20 homers the year before. You're not going to have to pay a lot of money for him, okay? He's still under contract. He's arbitration eligible, but he sure doesn't become a free agent for a little bit. He did on the season bat .280 and had a slug of .450, which is decent.
Would have been one of the best hitters on the Tigers. Easily. If not the best, I'm just basing it off of, did Riley Green lead the team in average for the season?
Yes, he did.
And it was what, 270 something? I'm just ballparking here, no pun intended. But I don't think, Shep, let me throw this at you. I think maybe you can get away with having Matt Vierling at third base and mixing in Jace Young to see what you have. Yeah, no, not every day, of course not. But mixing in Jace Young to see what you have. I think if you go get a third baseman like Alec Boehm, I think it almost blocks the Jace Young potential. Now, there are people out there that don't believe in him, so I think the fan base is going to be pretty split on that idea, but that's how I look at it.
Okay, when we say block, are we so convinced that Jace Young is the second coming of George Brett and we worry about blocking him? How many guys would you sign who are proven players that you'd be willing to block at a position for Detroit? I mean, we didn't want to block Cole Keith. Fair enough. So there you go. Why are you afraid to block any position if it's based on this youth movement that Detroit has? And Matt Vierling, you want to rotate Matt Vierling and Jace Young. And Matt Vierling had a really good year last year. He had a career high in homers, had a career high in RBIs. I don't know, man. You get a player like Alec Boehm. I think you allow Matt Vierling to play more of a natural position, rotate in the outfield. Boehm's a really good defensive player as well. I absolutely would explore the possibility of trading prospects for Alec Boehm.
I would explore it too because
I can't say right now, but yeah, I would do that.
Well, and you and I agree, Shep, that the Tigers don't have nearly as many everyday players as they should have. And Alec Boehm is a proven gun, right? I mean, like, he can play every day and, like you said, give you 280 and a decent amount of homers, hit for power a little bit. So from that aspect, that's a shot in the arm for the lineup. I don't know if that's your biggest priority. I don't know if it should be your biggest priority. And we now have
that? What is the priority?
Starting pitching.
Well, you're going to get that. You can always find that. You can always
and you're going to inevitably get Job next year. You hope Mize is
healthy. Do you know who led the team in RBIs this year?
Riley Green.
Do you know how many he had?
No.
74. Do you know how many Alec Boehm had?
Probably more than that.
97.
Yeah.
Do you know who led the Tigers in RBIs last year?
No. Who?
Spencer Torkelson.
Really?
Yeah. 91. Do you know how many Alec Boehm had?
Over 100.
97.
Oh, close.
Okay. He hits in the lower part of their order. They have more people on, so it's not always a fair comparison. Phillies have they have better players. They have more players on base to drive them in than Detroit did. I've been preaching for a right-handed power hitter. I don't know if I'd call him a power hitter. I wouldn't. But he produces runs.
He's a hitter with power.
He's also a better defensive player. He would be your best defensive player, period, on the infield.
Yeah, probably.
And by the way, he's 27. You don't have to worry about the contract for a couple of years. And you're giving up prospects for a guy like that who's going to be your everyday third baseman and give you some power from the right side, hit in the middle of your order. You're giving up prospects for a guy like that and you can evaluate. And if you're worried about blocking Jace Young, who's still getting used to playing third base since he was a second baseman at Texas Tech, then do me a favor. Do me a favor. Just sign somebody for a short period of time. And then if that guy doesn't work out, then you're no longer blocking Jace Young.
Correct. And Shep, let me be very clear. I am all for exploring this. I'm with you. I think you got to make the call. We'll see what it would take. Right. Again, this is a fresh story, so we'll probably find out more as the day goes on. But
a lot depends on how much it would take. You're not giving up. I mean, you're not giving up Max Clark, Kevin McGonigal. You're not giving up guys like that. All right, you're giving up lower prospects and all. And look, they've got a history in dealing with the Phillies.
They do, yeah.
So I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility. I would explore it in a second, and if it didn't cost too much, I'd do it in a second. For all the reasons that I've already given.
I think if you didn't have Matt Vierling, who ironically came from Philly, right? But Matt Vierling, to me, I don't think he's an everyday third baseman. That's not what I'm saying. But I think it is kind of a, for lack of a better term, perfect storm, because you have a young guy that you might want to see what you have, and then you also have the utility guy who you can rely on to play there 2 or 3 games a series. So I think I would kick the tires on Alec Bohm for sure. I'm with you. But I'm not going to be up in arms if the Tigers would rather just kind of stand pat, because one of their more proven players is Matt Vierling, and then you do have a younger guy in Jace Young. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out where this team's going to get better, Trent. Okay? And if you're going to just bring back the same guys and you want to do the rotation, look, you and I have bitched all season long about this team not having everyday players. And now you're telling me you don't want to block Jace Young and you want to use a rotation at third base with Matt Vierling and Jace Young instead of taking a guy like Alec Bohm.
Well, because I think Matt Vierling Matt Vierling to me is very, very, very close to an everyday player. Am I wrong on that? Am I off base? Matt Vierling was maybe your second or third best player in the field last year.
But he's not an everyday third baseman.
Correct. But you could have an everyday third baseman at Jace Young.
Yeah. You could have. You could.
Yeah.
And you don't know that. Are you trying to take the next step or not? I mean, let's just bring them all back then. Just bring the entire team back, okay? Let's just rotate Baez and Sweeney at short. Let's rotate Carpenter and Vierling in right. Let's rotate Wenzel Perez and Parker Meadows in center. Let's just do that. Let's rotate Jake Rogers and whoever is the other catcher. Let's just do that. Let's have our everyday player being Riley Green and maybe Cole Keith. No, let's rotate Ibanez and Cole Keith at second base. Let's do that and see how far we get. You and I said when the playoffs ended, we need everyday players. We both said that. Now you're making a case, forget the everyday player. Let's make sure we're not blocking a guy we don't know can play third yet. And all the people who were scouting him are saying it's an adjustment. The defense is not his game yet. He's got to get better in that regard. You want to make sure, don't get an everyday third baseman, because we might have a guy who could play, and we have an outfielder we've turned infielder who you feel comfortable with playing there once.
No. I'm with you. I would rather have the everyday player in Alec Bohm. I understand the logic if they don't do that. And I'm also with you in that if they do take that route of like not blocking Jace Young and platooning third base just to get Jace Young. So I agree with you. That's linear. You're not getting better.
Okay. Yeah. And by the way, Matt Vierling played 51 games at third base for me last year. It's just, and I like him, but we just got to be careful there. All right. Really appreciate everybody joining us via the phone line, via text, and especially on StreamYard. We're back with you tomorrow morning, 6:00 here on X's and Bros throughout the great state of Michigan. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday, everybody.
Attention Michigan fans, it isn't a Michigan game day without a Michigan